Thank you for joining us today. I'm Jeannie Long, Executive Director of Chicago Collections Consortium. And if you're joining us for the first time today, welcome. And for those of you who are returning listeners, it's great to have you back with us. Conversations with Chicago Collections spotlights our members' archival holdings, allowing listeners for a quick look at their fascinating collections. Before we begin our conversation with Chicago Cubs manager of Authentics and Archives, Pat Manaher, I'd like to thank CCC's donors shown here for the support and their generous support, which allows us to offer unique and free programming offered here today. For some reason, there we go. And also, additionally, these supporters allow us to offer our Explore portal, which is CCC's cornerstone initiative. CCC member collections are hosted freely and openly on the Explore portal. So we invite you to jump online and to Explore portal, and also check out our website at chicagocollections.org to see a listing of other programs and upcoming events as well. Please join our sign up for our newsletter, which is located at the bottom of our homepage as well. So let's begin our discussion with Pat today. Pat, I promise you we won't discuss anything related to trades with the Chicago Cubs, but I know our audience and our listeners are quite interested in your archives. And can you tell us, Pat, a little bit about how things came to be with the Chicago Cubs archives?
Sure thing. And first, yes, thanks for having me to talk about a little bit about the Cubs and our team archive. We're very excited to kind of talk through kind of what we do with the Cubs and talk with everyone else here in Chicago Collections. But yeah, so just kind of a brief start overview of our Cubs archives. So my name is Pat, obviously. The archives is actually hosted right now under our marketing department. So that's what I'm in. And it actually started back in the early 2010s through our legal team. There's always been kind of an emphasis on, collecting and showcasing our history. But kind of unfortunately before, the 2000s or the mid 2010s, I'd say, like a lot of other companies or sports teams, the organization wasn't great at collecting and saving their history or even knowing what we had or where stuff was.
An expense involved in that too.
Yeah, exactly. So, so what we wanted to do, and this was before I had even started, we re-emphasized, finding where our history was, what we had, what we didn't have, so we could, make sure we told the complete accurate story of the Chicago Cubs, and not only the Chicago Cubs baseball team, but Wrigley Field as well, which is a big part of it. So if you can kind of go to the next slide, you'll see, and again, this was kind of before I started, but there's a mission statement of exactly what we're trying to do. You can see here, obviously, Wrigley Field is over 100 years old now. We celebrated our 100th birthday of Wrigley Field back in 2014. And, you can kind of read what it says there, but the history of the team, which played continuously in one city longer than any other team in U.S. pro sports, which I didn't even, know before I started. And I thought it was kind of a crazy, cool fact, and, just reemphasizes why exactly, this stuff is important.
Absolutely. Tell us more though, diving into actually some of the collections, legacy here.
Sure. Yeah. So again, kind of as I mentioned, we think we're one of the more unique franchises because we not only have to account for the Cubs and our players and managers and front office history, but also Wrigley Field's history. Obviously, there's been a long timeline of events, not only with the Cubs playing baseball there, but then the Chicago Bears, any concerts we've had, to more recent community events like doing a food drive during COVID last year, having various vaccination at the station here last year as well as this year. So there's kind of a lot to keep track of
Well, and it was a whole nother ballpark once you got lights too. So that took it to another level in terms of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So as we kind of go through this slide, we'll take you through some kind of items that I think were cool in our collection, maybe stuff that we had just recently found or stuff we've had for a while, both for the team and the field. Obviously, 2016 was a big collection period for the Cubs, which was always fun. But we're lucky to always have fans and front office members and various collectors just always looking out for the Cubs, and they really care about our history and where these items are and where these hidden stories kind of are throughout our history. So,
well, can you tell us a little bit about like the kind of the what we're seeing here in the home office and kind of the role of leadership for the Chicago Cubs and their engagement in terms of preserving that and sharing that history for that matter?
Yeah. So totally. Obviously, one of the biggest things is to have support from the bottom up in an organization. And so when the Ricketts family purchased the team, again in the early 2010s, one of the first things they did was look into our history and what we have, and that's essentially why the team archive was created. Even to this day, they're pretty heavily involved. I wouldn't say in the day-to-day stuff, but they always are wanting updates and what's going on with our team archive. How can we display stuff for fans to see? Fans will still send stuff directly to all the Ricketts, and then obviously that'll get sent back to our archive team to kind of log, catalog, and talk through. Does this fill a gap in our collection? But again, so the Ricketts have always been a huge supporter of continuing to find our history, as well as both of our team presidents on the baseball side, formerly Theo, but now Jed and his team, and on the business side, Crane Kenny and kind of the whole executive team they're always involved. And honestly, they're big fans of memorabilia and artifacts as well. So that always helps. They're always one of the first ones who want to see what we have. And so anytime I have a cool item, I make sure to show them and keep them in the loop, just because they think it's fun, not because necessarily they want to be involved, but they love looking at this stuff as well. So it's really good to have support in anything that we do with the organization, but especially with this stuff, because it's so important and everybody recognizes the value in it, even if it doesn't really make business sense sometimes to invest in a certain item or a certain display. They know it has to be done just to because it's so important to our fans and our history. So it's good to have that support.
And we appreciate you recognizing the mission of Chicago Collections Consortium and your engagement with our membership as well. That I know that meant a lot to us, but recognizing that to be able to share that history to a wider audience as well. That's what makes, in your earlier comments about the history of Wrigley Field and the Cubs, that's what makes Chicago so unique in that sense too.
Yeah, and exactly. I was going to mention that kind of as a side note. So our City Connect uniforms that we debuted this year that have kind of Wrigley across the chest. That was another kind of organizational, a big pillar this year with a new uniform. It's not really archive related, but it's more so like sense of Chicago community related. And again, that's one of the reasons we're lucky to be in this group and be able to share this presentation, because we want to connect with other collections out there and continue to learn as much as we can about the city and how the Cubs fit in Chicago's history as well. So
yeah, and just as you were comments earlier, just Wrigley Field alone in itself, being a landmark and the rich history just in the building. It's be honest, regardless if you're whatever type of fan you are, and I'll say that the dreaded, even if you're a Cardinal fan, you can appreciate a different feeling altogether when you go into Wrigley Field.
Exactly. And we kind of get that all the time as well. If we have, a lot of opposing teams visit Wrigley Field a lot just to, see the field and, they always, even if they're not rooting for, the Cubs on the field, they always respect, when they walk into Wrigley and see our various displays, that we'll get into and whatnot, but they respect our history as well, which is always nice to hear.
Great. Well, so we dive in more on the actual archives faction too, in terms of like Chicago Cubs 101. I mean, we're fast, we'd be really interested in learning how your materials come to be within the collection. What type of staff are you supported by? I'll let you take it away on this time.
Totally, yeah. Well, I already got into a little bit of like the history and how the Cubs archives started, but currently it's myself who oversees the day-to-day within the Cubs of the team archive, and then so the gentleman I directly report to as well, he kind of oversees the stuff, but again, he's kind of got a lot going on, so he doesn't really oversee the day-to-day with me. But so right now it's just me, and it's always kind of interesting, especially in the baseball world, to see how different team archives are handled, or what department they fall under. Some teams have bigger museums, like the Cardinals and the Reds. They probably have the two biggest actual museums in Major League Baseball. Some teams have it structured like us, where they have like a marketing rep overseeing the team archive. Some don't do anything at all, and then some have a larger staff. So it's kind of interesting. It's a little mix for all baseball teams. But over the past, even since I've started overseeing the archive, which was back in, I think, end of 2017, 2018, and we had reached out to various baseball teams, sports teams, larger companies, just to kind of get a feel of how various folks handled their team archive, and it was kind of a mix as well. So I thought that was always interesting. Mm-hmm. So right now it's just myself overseeing the day-to-day, internally at least. And then we'll have, so our archival vendor is Heritage Works, who some of you may be familiar with, but they oversee our digital archive and our physical archive. So all of the majority of our artifacts are stored at their offsite facility. So it's actually not even in the state, it's down south a little bit, but so we visit there, whenever we need to, but they're also able to ship up our items, and we ship down, new artifacts down to them on an as needed basis. And they really have a larger staff, that helps us with research requests, finding inventory, again, photographing any of our new artifacts that we may need, helping us with determining, if there's an item that a collector or a fan sends to us, determining whether that fills a gap in our collection and helps tell, one of the various stories of the Cubs. So they're a big help. Honestly, we probably couldn't do it without them.
Sure.
Yep, go ahead.
I had the question on your collections policy as well.
Yep.
And how
so
with that.
Yeah, kind of how that works. Mm-hmm. Is so we typically don't buy items or purchase items unless it's just something that the team can't say no to. But for the most part, there's a couple different ways that we collect items. First, it's for the more current items, like the World Series base or the Last Out baseball that you see pictured there. Obviously, the Last Out baseball was given from Anthony Rizzo, our first baseman, which obviously it's a tough time to discuss him, but
you had to say former first base.
Yes, yeah, I'm not used to it yet, but so that was obviously graciously given from him to the team, to our owner. So you can see that baseball on the bases displayed prominently in our front office. So to get into it, it'll be myself overseeing kind of like the more recent stuff, and just kind of knowing, just because I've been here for a bit now, kind of what items we're looking for, whether that's from a player debut, their first hit, their first home run, whether that's a baseball, a jersey, a bat, a base, various items like that. What can we keep for our team archive? What can we give to our players to keep for themselves, because they're always very aware of these milestones for themselves. And then what we can, give away to other various, stakeholders in the organization. So obviously we had a larger collection period, probably one of the larger ones we've had in our history over the past, 5-6 years when we had that window of success. So we were collecting quite a bit of current stuff. And then for the older stuff, we really rely on our collectors and fans, as well as kind of former front office and just various, former players that, myself or other team executives that are with the team have built relationships with over the past, 5, 10, going back way far. I was talking through this a little bit, and our collectors just have so much passion for these items. A couple of years ago at our Cubs convention, we've had a collector helping out with us, for a bunch of conventions, and he would always fill a display case of his items at Cubs convention. And I remember the first day of convention when it was all done, I just went to check in with him, and he was just talking to me about the items a little bit, and he was in tears describing his collection just because he loved it so much, and his passion was just melting through his body, and it was great to see.
It's really the word passion, though, and the enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And sometimes those fans can be questioned in terms of their loyalty, depending on the passion continues for sure. And,
so we always expect everybody kind of looking out for us, and a lot of times we get donations, very gracious donations from people who have items in their collection that they no longer want, or unfortunately if somebody passes away and their collection is with a family, a lot of the times they'll donate it to us, whereas they could just sell those items if they wanted to. So that's always something we respect, and that's why we want to get a lot of these items out on on display throughout Wrigley or throughout our campus, which is kind of what we can get into a little bit next year.
One question I had, Pat, though, on the authentic side too, that's living history in the moment and how that's captured, and your role with that as well.
So kind of just a little quickly on the authentic side of things. So I also oversee our memorabilia program that we sell items for Cubs to benefit Cubs charities. So that's actually how I had started with the Cubs back in 2013. So in that role, I had always kind of helped procure items, the current items for our team archive, and our employee who oversaw that before me. So it was almost, I always consider myself, I was in training for the archive before when I was doing for Authentics, because they helped me have a filter of hey, what do we collect? What do we need for our archive, and what can we sell? But it's, it was a line I had to walk, but it was, I had the support again of our executive team, and, there was never a set number I had to hit sales wise where I was teetering on should we save this or do we have to sell it? So it was never it's never been an issue of, saving something over selling something. So.
Absolutely. Well, let's dive into some of the displays then. Tell us what we're looking at here.
Yeah, so I was going to put some photos on here, but honestly, we have a lot of displays, so I kind of wanted to just talk through a little bit. But so if you've ever been to a Cubs game and been out in the bleachers, you may have seen we have 5 bleacher display cases in the bleachers, and we theme those kind of, we change those every couple of years. But right now we have, I think, one called the Bleachers, which is another one that was filled by one of our gracious collectors who actually just saw. The other day, he was out there looking at his case. We have just kind of whatever fits for that year. I think we have one that, a Cubs International case, just various places we've played, because last year we were going to play in London before, COVID canceled that trip, but we're hoping to go there again, or be selected to go there at some point. We have Gold Gloves, kind of different awards out in the bleachers in left field as well. So we try to get as much in those, and those are probably our largest display at Wrigley, but we try to get as much in that as we can. We have a very cool display in our Cubs clubhouse that is actually right across from the team weight room. So again, Theo, when he was here, again, it was very into the archive and team history, as well as Jed is still into it. They always wanted to remind the players kind of the organization that you play for and everything that's happened, with the team and at Wrigley Field. So it kind of serves as a motivating tool, as they're, working out in the clubhouse. And I think we have a picture of that later on that I'll reference again when we get to it. But again, that's from a private collector, and that's probably one of the most impressive displays we have will ever have at Wrigley Field, I think.
Source of inspiration. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So obviously we had I don't think the trophy room is there right now, but we had the World Series trophy on display, of course, in 2017, 2018, after we had won it. And of course, that was a big hit. Again, going back to our team owners and ownership, they have a large display case, which was on a photo early in the slide. They always want new stuff in there because, they have pretty, significant guests that they want to impress with the history of the Cubs and the team as well. So again, we had new premier clubs after our renovations were done. They're finally done. So we have new premier clubs again, just with the emphasis on team history. Even our ticketing department and premier department wanted, cool items to showcase to our fans. Again, knowing that we hadn't previously had a lot of items out there for fans to see, they wanted to make sure to build that into our premier clubs for them to experience, when they're not in their seats at the game. Office floors and lobby, again, we have a bunch of photos and just different trophies and displays in our front office lobby, if you've ever been in there. As well as on the different, working floors for our employees. We have a lot of Otis Shepherd artwork, just a lot of historical photos on the wall that we help source through, Heritage Works helps us source those through our digital archive as well. So we even have some at our retail store, again, just more Gold Gloves, Silver Sluggers, MVP awards, stuff like that. I think we have a game use base out there from 2016. So just more stuff that we'd rather not have in our storage. We want to get out to our displays for fans to see, and again, just more stuff in the clubhouse pageantry that our baseball ops team is really wants to emphasize with the players. So we always say, while we don't have a larger museum like some of the other teams in baseball, we like to consider Wrigley Field a museum in itself, just because it's so old, and then we like to complement that with our various displays.
And well, so we dive in terms of some of the digital assets too, and yeah,
Totally.
Yeah, this is what we're really curious about and learning more.
Yeah, in terms of what we actually have in our archive, I just put together some brief highlights of stuff I think is cool. So one of the biggest kind of acquisitions we made, again, this was before I'd overseen the collection, but was the Braceburg collection. And those were just a bunch of older photos, kind of a Cubs players, management, Wrigley Field, just again, stuff that we knew we had to have. So that was something that was purchased from the team, from another archive group. We got the negatives from all that, and the originals then were shipped to Heritage Works, and they were able to scan those and upload to our digital archive and tag them with as best they could. And they worked with our team historian a bit to make sure everything in there is accurate. But there's thousands of photos in there from I think 1929 to about 1980s or so. So I think, and I'm always kind of getting lost in that collection, which is kind of fun.
I would imagine.
Yeah. So blueprints, another kind of awesome thing we have. A couple years ago during the renovations, we would always, relay to the construction team that, hey, if you find anything cool, in the barrels of Wrigley Field, don't throw it away. Let us know, and we'll look into it. So they actually did find some blueprints of Wrigley Field. You can see the years there from way back. So we actually had those restored by conservation experts.
And Pat, where did they actually find them? Like,
yeah, so when we dug out the seating bowl of the lower level to make those premier clubs, they were under there. So not anywhere I had been. I've been under there before, and you have to duck and whatnot before renovations. But yeah, so they found them underneath there. It was pretty crazy. But they also, I think they found a barn door, and we obviously didn't know why that was, but we brought that to our historian, and they said it was used as a stable for horses when they would help with the grounds crew back in the day for both the Bears and the Cubs. So yeah, that was kind of, those first two things are pretty cool. Again, just going over a collection from another donor. We have all World Series and All-Star Game programs, World Series collection, just again stuff that I had helped with collect, and obviously our team and executives were really interested in making sure we didn't sell any of that stuff. To this day, we still haven't sold one World Series item, game used item. And then just general kind of inventory, clippings, photos, kind of collectibles, that stuff we have. So right now, some of this stuff is on display throughout Wrigley Field, and then we have kind of plans for in the future to more, I guess, aggressively expand the archive and what's accessible to fans.
but Pat, can I ask you that kind of mean question? What would you say in terms of your favorite, item? I mean, you spoke about the incredible photo collections, but is there something that really speaks to you, like,
Yeah,
pretty amazing, or this is Chicago Cubs history at its finest?
yeah. Yeah, so just one thing that comes to mind that's, I guess, not 100% Cubs is we have an old, it's this large piece of like metal that, when I first started, I didn't know what it was, but now it's kind of one of the highlights of our collections. It's an old yard marker from when the Bears played here. So yeah, it's like, if you know what a yard marker looks like now for football, it's more so like plastic, I'd say, but this one's all this like super old and rusted, and it's huge. So we actually had it on display in our bleacher case a couple of years ago. But that's just such I think a unique piece of more so Wrigley Field history, because I mean, it's, you don't realize, but the Bears played here for so long. I think Soldier Field just recently passed Wrigley as, the venue that the Bears had, had played for at the longest. So that's probably one of my favorite items, besides, I guess, some of the World Series stuff and the photos.
Yeah, thanks for reminding us about that. You do forget that how long the Bears had.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously you had mentioned some of the things on loan to the Cubs, and where can people see some of these things?
Yeah, so here's the photo I was talking about for the, this is in the Cubs clubhouse. So when we took this picture, we're actually right, the weight room would be behind us right now. So you can see all those items are original right there. And that was on loan from a private collector. And then we also have, a cool 500 home run club autographed baseball collection from a private collector, that we've displayed in various clubs or in the clubhouse throughout the years. So again, just very, very gracious and thankful for collectors that are willing to work with us, and recognizing that we don't have a lot of footprint to display some of their items, but we kind of make work what we can. And that kind of brings me to my next point is sometimes we'll, give items out to loan for other locations if it can't be at Wrigley Field. So you can kind of see 4 different, areas we have them right now. And one of the highlights is, we have on display or on loan Ben Zobrist some World Series game used items at the Chicago History Museum, who I believe they're one of the members here with Chicago Collections.
Founding members, I might add, yes.
Yeah, there you go. So we're glad to be, reconnected with them through this as well. So that's a cool photo of when it was on display there. And you know, before COVID, we had been in touch with them, I think, on updating our display a little bit. But so yeah, it's good to always, you know, branch out and have items on display at various places throughout the city if we can't do it at, you know, inside Wrigley Field or throughout our campus.
Absolutely. Well, this has been, you know, really a great conversation. And we're right at 12:30. So if anyone has any additional questions, I'm sure Pat, you can take them at Cubs Archives at Cubs.com. Any information on Chicago Collections Consortium, please reach out to us at info@chicagocollections.org. Thank you so much, Pat, for making time for the conversation today. We really appreciate, you know, the insider knowledge, taking us beyond the dugout, so to speak, into the archives. So, so thank you.
No problem. Thanks for letting me join here, and look forward to talking with anybody who has any questions.
Let's see, we've got a question that came to me. We've got somebody asking to share your personal email, and I think they can just reach you directly at Cubs Archives as well. This probably came in before they saw that. So
yeah, I oversee that account, so I'll be checking that one as well.
Great. Any other questions before we close? Okay, well, thank you all very much. Thanks so much again, Pat, for making the time. Okay, here's a quick one before we go. What's the oldest item in the collection?
The oldest item.
Jeopardy question.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd have to look, but right now I'd probably say it's some of those blueprints, just because they're from when around Wrigley Field was built. But I will say there's an opportunity that we're working on right now of acquiring some more items from a collection that would be from the early 1900s. So that would enhance our collection, of course. So I don't have an exact answer, but that's my best guess right now, just because we have so much.
Oh, interesting. Any last call for questions? And then, as we said, feel free to reach out to Pat at Cubs Archives at Cubs.com. And also, we look forward to seeing you again at one of our other programs that were hosted online. So thanks for making time. And again, many thanks to you, Pat.
No problem. Thanks, everyone.